Everyone assumes that Narcissa Malfoy, Draco's mother and Lucius Malfoy's wife, was by default another Death Eater in Voldemort's army. But what many people are unaware of is that Narcissa was never technically a Death Eater. Though she supported Lucius in his Death Eater journey and believed in blood purity, she, as many of the Death Eaters, followed the Dark Lord more out of fear than because they wanted to. Today, in Fantasy Archive, we delve into a question that has always wandered the minds of a lot of Harry Potter fans. Why did Narcissa lie about Harry being dead? Was she a true ally of Voldemort? Look no further. Today we will make our own analysis as to why we think Narcissa Malfoy was never a true ally, while we learn more about this underrated character. Although Narcissa is known as a Malfoy, at birth she carried the family name Black. Yes, like Sirius, they are family. This means that her sister Bellatrix killed Sirius despite being cousins. Let's understand Narcissa. She was a purist and an extremist among witches. She was raised by purist parents who were very strict on their children and emphasized the importance of keeping the bloodline pure, to the point where they disowned her sister Andromeda Black for marrying the muggle-born Ted Tonks. She considered her cousin a blood traitor, and the news of the death of Sirius wasn't something that kept her up at night. When she was 11, Narcissa Black was admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in 1966. She obviously was sorted into Slytherin, where also she met her future husband, Lucius Malfoy, making her interaction with people like Snape and Sirius more than possible. After Hogwarts, and during the First Wizarding War, Narcissa married Lucius Malfoy, later buying the Malfoy Manor in Wiltshire. After that, Narcissa was introduced to the Death Eaters, although she never became one herself. Some years after that, Narcissa gave birth to Draco Malfoy. When Voldemort fell, Lucius Malfoy claimed that it was only under the influence of the Imperious Curse that he did the Dark Lord's bidding, and that he and his family were completely innocent of all charges presented against them. This is why, when they were declared not guilty at last, Lucius entered to work at the Ministry of Magic under the recommendation of the minister himself, Cornelius Fudge. He adopted Lucius in the ministry as an example of being merciful, and that all wizards should apply forgiveness to those who were only under the dark influence of he who must not be named. Though many said it was due to his cowardliness and the fact that he always wanted to look good in the Daily Prophet. That's why, when Harry Potter declares at the end of the Goblet of Fire that the Dark Lord has returned, Cornelius Fudge lets himself be manipulated by Lucius, convincing the minister that Voldemort has never returned. That gave Narcissa and her family the maximum possible immunity they could hope for. Lucius Malfoy disappointed Lord Voldemort in several ways. First, he never stayed 100% loyal. He was sympathetic to Lord Voldemort's goals, but was never willing to go the distance. This extends to Narcissa, who ultimately just wanted for her family to be safe. Second, he gave one of his master's most important possessions to a teenage girl. Lucius wanted to shame Arthur Weasley. If Ginny had been named to the public as the one responsible for opening the Chamber of Secrets, Arthur's attempts to establish a law granting Muggles rights would have failed. But all he did was get one of Voldemort's Horcruxes destroyed. With the fall of Lucius Malfoy from Voldemort's graces, the Dark Lord took the Malfoy Manor as his base of operations and included Narcissa in their meetings because aside from being a Malfoy, she was also Bellatrix's sister. That way the Dark Lord had total control over that family, and more with the recruitment of Draco. But if we analyze this branch of the story carefully, Narcissa is never considered to be a full-fledged Death Eater, like her husband or sister. On the contrary, she is only the host of Lord Voldemort while he plans his next movement to destroy Harry and Hogwarts. By having Narcissa join Death Eater meetings, taking his wand and asking Draco to kill the only wizard Tom Riddle had ever feared, Dumbledore, Lord Voldemort punishes Lucius, shaming the Malfoys and keeping them in a vulnerable position. This is when Narcissa's survival instincts start to kick in. During the infiltration of the Ministry of Magic by Harry, Hermione, and Ron, Narcissa herself is the one that comes up with the idea to use the house elf creature to their advantage, almost succeeding in capturing young Potter. Furthermore, when Voldemort endangers Draco by recruiting him for a suicide mission, killing Dumbledore, he messed with something sacred. Narcissa knows that her loyalty will always fall to her family, never to the Dark Lord. Even if he suspected a sense of disloyalty, he wouldn't understand why. He doesn't understand love. It was far more important to him to keep humiliating the Malfoys and having Narcissa on a leash through her son Draco, making them examples of what happens when you fail him. Narcissa couldn't be a loyal ally to Voldemort because her loyalties lied with her family. Without a doubt, the biggest problem that Narcissa had to face every day while watching over her family was, ironically, her sister, Bellatrix Lestrange, the most faithful Death Eater of Voldemort's entire army. She was like the Dark Lord's lapdog, always ready to kill, always ready to do her Dark Lord's bidding. Having that in mind, Narcissa knew that she had to be very careful when thinking or talking about her true intentions, because even if it was her sister, Bellatrix would have never doubted it for a second to report her to the Dark Lord if she had any suspicion that Narcissa was playing a double game. In order to protect her son, Narcissa begs for help. She makes an unbreakable vow with Severus Snape so that he protects Draco, and in case Draco fails, take on his assignment to kill Dumbledore. In the Battle of the Astronomy Tower, Bellatrix has no problem pushing Draco to kill Dumbledore, even if that means that the boy is going to break emotionally beyond repair. A great aunt, without a doubt. One that didn't give one bit of anything about her nephew or her sister. Obsessed to go to Voldemort to report that Hogwarts' director had indeed been killed by one member of her family. That's why Narcissa was so smart as to pretend she was the most faithful Death Eater of all time, to trick Bellatrix into thinking everything was well in the Malfoy family. Another one of the pillars to support this theory falls in the famous scene in the Forbidden Forest, where Narcissa lied to Voldemort about the death of Harry Potter. When shot with the Avada Kedavra curse, Harry lies motionless on the ground for some minutes. At that moment, Voldemort sends Narcissa to check if the boy is alive, and that has always caused some sort of debate among Harry Potter fans. Why send Narcissa, of all people, to check if his arch-enemy was still alive and not go himself? Voldemort probably suspected Harry was dead. Since the Horcrux died, it no longer felt a connection to Harry and is likely only wanted confirmation. This makes him let his guard down. On the other hand, if indeed Harry was alive, he would attack at the first chance that presented itself to him. If he sent his weakest servant, he already had one obstacle for Harry. The Dark Lord would also have a human shield in case he needed to defend himself. He already saw the Malfoys as useless. As always, Voldemort's worst mistake was not understanding what a mother's love can do in the most desperate times. When kneeling into Harry, Narcissa bargains for his life in exchange for knowing if Draco is still alive and well. Harry answers yes, and at that moment, Narcissa decides to betray the Dark Lord once and for all, saying that the boy who lived is actually dead. She knew the only way to get into Hogwarts was as part of Voldemort's winning army. Being successful at her deceit, she becomes one of the two people who successfully fooled Voldemort, the other one being Snape. But how did Narcissa fool Voldemort? It is suspected that Narcissa was very skilled at occlumency, and that the Dark Lord could not read through her. Or perhaps her mother's protective instinct was strong enough at the time for her not to get caught at least this once. It's ironic both times Voldemort's downfall is always preceded by the one thing he never understood: a mother's love for her child. Lily saved Harry, sacrificing herself and making the killing curse rebound to the Dark Lord, creating the only Horcrux he never wanted to make. 17 years later, Tom Riddle makes the same mistake again, this time with Narcissa Malfoy, who, to protect her son, lies straight to his face, provoking his true death at the end of the Battle of Hogwarts. As Harry understood in the Order of the Phoenix, Tom will never know what love and friendship is, the most powerful magic in the world, something that not even the most powerful dark wizard of all time could understand. So was Narcissa Malfoy a true ally of Voldemort? No, she never was. The only thing she was loyal to was her family. Beyond that, when Harry finally counteracts at the climax of the story, she wishes for Voldemort to die so her family is finally free